All right, welcome back, everybody. We finally started the final book, Matsuribayashi, and we got a little Takano backstory. Not that I give a crap about her at all, but let's just dive right in and continue. Banquet to backhand over. One more speaker, then the toast starts. Are you ready? This is the back end. We're ready. We can't hear anything from inside, so please give us a cue when the speech is wrapping up. Listen up. 10 bottles of beer per table. Make sure to deliver them to your area smoothly. Young hotel workers dressed smartly in bow ties pulled bottle after bottle out of their beer. They waited for the cue to serve the drinks while listening through the intercom. At a normal party, they could put bottles of beer on the tables ahead of time, but if there was a lecture before the party, then they couldn't. Guests don't mind sushi going dry due to a long speech, but they don't like seeing their tables get wet with condensation from the bottles of beer. Dry sushi. And more than anything, they certainly don't want to drink warm beer. Well, that's why beer has to be served right before a toast. However, there's always a speech before a toast. And usually a long one. Especially at a big party like this, there are lots of guests that give speeches, so it's extremely difficult to know when to serve. For that reason, the bottles end up sitting outside by the banquet room. And people end up drinking warm beer anyway. There were several dozen tables with white tablecloths on them in the banquet room. Approximately 8 people were sitting at each table, so there were at least a few hundred people in the room. The banquet room was filled with excitement. There were many plates with many different kinds of food on each table. A sushi platter, sashimi platter, fruit platter. Also along the wall, there were cooks ready to serve fresh sashimi. All the guests appeared to be well-mannered gentlemen and were clearly notable people in various different fields. Huge and beautiful chandelier above them clearly indicated that this hotel held a good status enough for these famous people. An elderly gentleman was giving a lengthy speech on the stage before making a toast. Usually, people don't like such long speeches, especially if it's made before a toast. But the guests occasionally shouted, "Yes, yes," and sometimes gave him a loud applause, filling the room with their fervor. Well, maybe fervor was a pleasant way to put it. It was probably more accurate to say their excitement was bizarre. Which country would actually teach people not to show respect towards their own flag? There's no others. Actually, Germany doesn't. It's happening only in Japan. Is that true? That's right, that's right! It's forcing people to respect their national flag and anthem and obstruction of their freedom. Listen, love for one's national flag and anthem comes naturally to us all. To know ourselves, to know our culture, to understand our history and our country itself. Those are the things that make you realize that you are a Japanese citizen, that make you understand the part you play as a citizen of this country. And the feeling you get from that love is love towards your own country. However, those anti-Japan teachers are proclaiming that it's a militaristic brainwashing. Those stupid claims are wrong. What are those people doing anyway? They're teaching our children to hate being Japanese. They're the ones brainwashing them with self-destructive education. They are teaching our children that Japan should be ashamed of itself, and that they should be ashamed of being Japanese. Forget who you are and deny your country. I would actually love to know if this is true or not, like right after the war. That's what they're teaching them. I'm guessing this is right after World War II. These innocent children listen and believe such nonsense. Of course they do. They go to school to learn things, right? If their teachers teach them that, of course the children believe it. Can you believe such corruption exists? We must do something about this country's education now, no matter what it takes. Sound of applause filled the banquet room. All the gentlemen agreed and expressed that they felt the same way by cheering him on. After that, a gentleman wearing a cloth sash approached the stage. The hall welcomed him onto the stage with another round of thunderous applause. A rousing theme from a popular drama series played as he took the stage, but it was entirely unnecessary before the overwhelming applause. The man's sash carried his name written in large letters along with the name of the prefecture he was running for office in. Let me introduce to you Patriot XXXX-kun. I love that. This man has served the former government as his right-hand man as director of the Office of Government for many years, supporting the prefecture government for a long time. Since the previous government has decided to retire, he's appointed as the next governor. Unfortunately, we have those anti-Japan teachers in our prefecture. While they proclaim freedom of education and freedom of thought, they're shamelessly forcing an anti-Japan education down on their children. Not gonna brain my wall? I don't care about any of this. Right. They don't teach real history. They teach our children that everything was Japan's fault. They don't even mention the true purpose of the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, or all those who fought to save Asian peoples from Western control. They don't even talk about how many Asian countries were actually Western colonies before Japan stood up for our freedom during the war. Our country has recovered amazingly since then, yet our children don't know any of that because those teachers don't teach them. How truly, truly sad. I can't stand the fact that those anti-Japanese Japan teachers are actually teaching our children alongside those teachers who take teaching seriously. They are insulting our educational institutions. I will become a governor and get rid of those teachers. Rabble, 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 rabble. This is what this scene is. Rabble, 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 rabble. Make sure our children will grow up to be decent young people who will carry on Japan's future. He, XXX-kun, announces his candidacy for the next year's prefectural government. We appreciate your support for him. I promise I will straighten out Japan's educational system. Thank you for your support. I don't care about politics in real life. I'm not going to care about politics in fake book life. The man was receiving a standing ovation. I need to explain a bit about this banquet before you misunderstand. Oh no, I understand all of it actually. It wasn't a conference of political association or a lecture by a political candidate. It was hard to believe. But this was nothing more than a meeting of a college's alumni association. Everyone should be familiar with what those are. Whether it's elementary school, junior high school, college. Once you graduate from one of those, you normally belong to an organization of alumni. You receive invitations for reunions where you talk about the good old days. However, there are many types of organizations. Some are simple, some are united with much tighter bonds. And once an organization becomes united with those tight bonds, it's no longer a simple organization of alumni. Rather, it becomes a significant factor known as alma mater clique. In Japanese society, it's traditional for graduates to form tighter bonds that go beyond the level of an organization. Also, the more superior the alma mater, the stronger the tendency holds true. The Imperial University, one of the best universities in the country, is famous for the deep bonds it graduates from. Why do superior people like to bond? It may be because they take pride in being superior. But more than that, maintaining connections is the most significant reason. All Imperial University graduates are elites in their respective fields. They are likely to succeed and become important people. When they do, the unity of their alumni association gains immeasurable meaning. In fact, even today, the Imperial University graduates maintain their tight academic clique, and they hold great influence throughout many different fields. They interact with other universities as well, so the graduates' bonds are extremely tight even today. Additionally, while Imperial University usually refers to the University of Tokyo, sometimes it's used to mean all 7 major universities in Japan. They are located in Tokyo, Kyoto, Tohoku, Kyushu, Hokkaido, Osaka, and Nagoya. They're all great schools. There happens to be an organization of alumni that includes all of those 7 years of university. The elderly gentlemen in this vacant room were each from one of those organizations. However, not every graduate will get an invitation here automatically. It is a society of secret gentlemen, and in order to become a member, one must first fulfill several conditions, such as recommendation from an existing member, contribution to the society, possession of status. Therefore, all the members are important people from different fields, and obviously the power of this organization is of a political nature. But there's one very important criterion one has to meet to join. Strong patriotism, heart that longs to contribute to Japan in its rebirth. As a result, this organization has become extremely nationalistic. Up on the stage, the candidate for the prefectural governmentship was still talking passionately. And among those elderly gentlemen in the crowd, Takano can be found. Takano seemed used to this kind of conference and seemed unsurprised at anything that was said. But at the same time, she looked rather fed up with it. As she was in attendance, she must have been one of the members, which meant she possessed not only extreme excellent academic background, but that the older gentleman here had acknowledged her equivalent contributions to society, and she possessed strong patriotism. However, her academic background was the only qualification she had met to join. She was only able to join as a special case because of her connections. She didn't even hold prejudiced ideas like the other members did. So why was she here today? Probably because the same reason as the man giving a speech up on stage. The man on stage didn't actually have prejudiced ideas, much like Takano. He only prepared a speech that he knew the guests would like. Politicians only want votes. Each and every person has a vote, but appealing to each one of them takes too long. So the most effective way is to appeal to organizations with a unified idea and a unified will. In other words, this man was giving this speech so he could garner support from those powerful people. The elderly gentlemen in the banquet room will do their best to support him since he appears to share their ideals. They can offer many different kinds of expediency, support, and assistance. To an outrageous degree, I might add. If the day's event continued in the same way, the organization would likely decide to officially support him. They will probably give him a great deal of financial aid. They'll assist him in different ways as well. Of course, the man on stage won't be the only one gaining something. When he wins the election and becomes the governor next year, the organization will welcome the governor as a new member and gain even more political influence. I don't care about any of this! And eventually the organization will become so powerful that nobody can ignore it. We know it's Tokyo, we were told in the last one. Those of you reading this right now are probably getting the sense that they're no mere alumni association. You'd be absolutely right. We already know from the last book. After reaching this level, they were a fine syndicate. No, they would be a secret society if the group wasn't so open about their activities. Thinking there's no way such a suspicious organization could exist in Japan, but everything I've explained is entirely true. There are several such influential groups and organizations within our society, and you need to understand that they hold powerful political clout and influence on our national policies. Some are alma mater cliques like the one I've described above. Others are scientific societies serving different parties, industrial groups, advisory committees, religious organizations, community service groups, and so forth. Also, there are right wings and left wings, the hawk and the dove. I won't go listing their specific names here. Oh, really? Mitch seems to care about listing all bunch of them. Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, you've probably read about them in your average newspaper. In Japan, the terms for such forces aren't very common. Most of you readers probably think of a suspicious organization wearing white hoods, but unfortunately that's a huge mistake. In America, where there's far more territory and citizens, there's way more groups like that. And they possess such vast influence that ignoring them is impossible. So, the terms they use for force doesn't apply to those on the scale of this syndicate. Sometimes people say that such groups have more power than the White House, and they're referred to as the shadow government. Even here in Japan, we have had a shadow government before the war, our Daibatsu. After we lost the war, the GHQ dismantled those blocks, but 40 years have passed since then. There's no guarantee our country hasn't given birth to another shadow government, given how good we are at collusion, groundwork, and backroom deals. Mio Takano was, in fact, attending a conference of such a shadow government. It might appear to be a guest house at a huge golf course. There were no golfers in sight, but by appearances that must be it. But appearances can be deceiving. This wasn't a golf course, but a huge backyard. The guest house was, in fact, a very stylish mansion. Normal people would be surprised to learn that this was a private residence. The interior of the building was lavish as the exterior. There were beautiful carpets on every floor, expensive-looking decorations on the wall, and expensive-looking bottles of alcohol on the shelves. That's the kind of room Takano was in. There was a knock at the door, and an old man in a wheelchair and a young woman pushing it entered. As Takano stood up to bow, the old man stopped her by raising his right hand. No need to stand up. Long time no see. I've been telling you can come see me any time, but you never do. It's great to see you again, Kozomi-sensei. The old man sat down on the sofa with assistance from the woman. He was very old, his face was covered in wrinkles, and he could hardly do anything on his own. Even so, he still held a great deal of power and influence. Oh my, you haven't changed a bit, have you? I can see lipstick on your neck. Oh? Is that right? Good grief, how embarrassing. There was no lipstick on his neck. The woman who was helping him with his wheelchair was too beautiful to be a mere helper, so Takano had suspected something. As it turned out, her guess was correct. Although he was so old he could die the next day, he wanted to stay sexually active until the very end. Even the Grim Reaper would think that's just absurd. Mio-chan, you've become quite beautiful yourself. You're not a little girl anymore, Oh, stop. If you really think that way, why did you try to touch my bottom, What have you got to lose from having an old guy like me touch your butt? I'm sure you have plenty of chances to touch a softer one, don't you? Kano and the old man enjoyed a tasteless conversation. They had clearly known each other for a long time and were very close. The young woman came back in to serve tea. After she left, the old man started to speak. Anyway, I'm so proud of you, Mio. I'm sure your grandfather in heaven is proud of you, too. I hope so. But I'm not even close to approaching the level of my grandfather's great work. Takano was unlucky in many different ways. The era he lived in, if he lived in a different era, I'm sure he would have finished his research. But he lived in that era, and ironically, that was why he noticed the existence of the Hinamizawa Syndrome. The world today is in a nuclear era. With America and Soviet Union glaring at each other over mounds of nuclear stockpiles, it takes nukes to have authority as a major power. Yet, we forever abandoned our nukes thanks to 3 anti-nuclear principles. In this age, we are now a nation without nukes. Okay. How deplorable. In the middle of the 20th century, despite rising tensions between East and West, there was temporary peace known as the Cold War, brought by a balance of nuclear weapons pointed at another. Permanent membership in the United Nations were monopolized by nations with nuclear arms. They secured their predominance with nuclear weapons, bound the world nuclear non-proliferation treaties, eternally banning non-nuclear nations. For Japan to become a nation that can't compete with... I can already tell you what's going to happen right now without finishing this. They're going to say, because they don't have nukes, we want to weaponize the Hinamizawa Syndrome. Takano gets sent to Hinamizawa. That's what the fuck is going to happen. That's what some people believed, at least. Realistically, Japan will never arm itself with nuclear weapons. I know. The citizens wouldn't accept it. Even if the government ignored their opinions and armed themselves with nuclear weapons, it wouldn't work. By abandoning nuclear weaponry, Japan gained the deterrent power of the United States. Though some people thought the only way for Japan to become equal to the United States would be to get nuclear arms of their own. But realistically, that was impossible. Even if Japan armed itself with nuclear weapons, that wouldn't automatically let Japan join the great powers. Takano and the old man discussed the balance of nuclear power in the world. Eventually, the sound of a cuckoo clock reminded them to return to the main subject at hand. The old man pointed to the attaché case that had been sitting next to Takano. Takano nodded once, opened it up, and removed the contents. There were brand new bills packed into it. How much was actually in there? I don't know. A bundle of brand new million-yen bills in 1 centimeter. So there must have been at least enough to make up 8 digits. There were also 2 more attaché cases by her side. However, neither Takano nor the old man were surprised. Takano closed the attaché case and bowed. Thank you very much, Kozumi-sensei. I'll never forget about this. Haha. Money should be handled by younger people. I can't take it to heaven with me. I just hope this will be assistance up to you. Use it wisely. Of course I will. I'll use this money to make my grandfather's dream come true. I envy Takano. What a wonderful grandchild he has. I'm sure he's bragging about you up there. I haven't done anything yet. I'll have earned this praise when I complete my grandfather's work. I'm so jealous. My boys are no good. They're only interested in making money. What really matters is how the money is spent. How you contribute to the country is what's most important. That's how you repay your debt to it, you know? Oh, so are you saying that treating all those lovers so lavishly is also a way of repaying your country? Of course! When they shop, the country makes money. Money goes around, you see? However, those lovers would probably end up buying some foreign goods. Things probably don't work quite the way this old man thinks they do. Takano chuckled to herself. But the money I give to those women and the money I give to you are completely different. I know that very well. You've worked very hard. You've retained trust and support from so many people. This is the first time I've ever mentioned it, but Haruyama and Mochizuki-kun weren't sure about you because of your age at first. That's why I'm acknowledging your efforts and giving you this money. I understand. Also, for me to give you this money means that I recognize you as an official successor of Takano's research. Thank you very much. Thank you for believing in me. I truly appreciate it. Don't mention it. This research is Takano's and yours too. He wouldn't want anyone else to take over. So thanks to all your effort, I didn't have to spend too much time convincing the other old folks. Completing my grandfather's research is the least I can do for him. I won't begrudge any efforts toward that aim. Takano smiled as she remembered everything she had to go through to get to this point. It went without saying, but the old men around Takano saw her as someone from their grandchildren's generation, or maybe even younger. Just how much trouble did Takano have to endure in order to gain the trust of those with such a large generation gap? Don't care. It was hard to describe to those who couldn't even imagine her trouble. But Takano earned it. She gathered allies, drove away enemies, garnered support, and forced them to recognize her. She spent a long time establishing trust and rising to the status the old men would welcome, which was all the more reason this meeting was a reward for her many days of hardship. Don't care. Now that she officially had powerful influence backing her, she could spread her wings and see the completion of her grandfather's unfinished research. Well, now that you're officially continuing Takano's research, there's something I need to tell you, Mio. What is it? I'm listening. The old man paused and pulled an expensive cigarette from the cigarette holder on the table. Takano lit it up for him. She didn't smoke herself, but knowing that old man did, she kept the lighter in her pocket. The constant buildup of little gestures like that was how she gained the trust she held today. Takano noticed the Hinamizawa Syndrome in Manchuria, not Japan. Yes. According to my grandfather's journal, around 1940 he learned that many soldiers sent from Hinamizawa to the Kwantung Army expressed terminal symptoms, which led him to surmise that an unknown infectious parasite dwelled in Hinamizawa. Under the harsh conditions of war, people sometimes lost their mind. In those conditions, those who were sent far off battlefield from Hinamizawa spent their days under duress, and occasionally they exhibited terminal symptoms, hallucinated, and caused twisted incidents. Yet that all occurred in the extensive chaos of the battlefield. Every incident was handled separately, and no one suspected there was an underlying cause. At the time, Takano was working as a military physician in the Kwantung Army. He was researching the prevention of different infectious diseases. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. And one day he noticed that several incidents of deranged behavior were occurring among soldiers from the same hometown. He hypothesized that these symptoms were unique to those from Hinamizawa and began his own personal research. He hired soldiers from Hinamizawa as workers in his research center and studied them there. Then he learned of the unique Hinamizawa faith in Oyashiro-sama, and he was convinced that he found an infectious parasite with unique properties. Some may wonder how he could be so certain that these symptoms were caused by unusual parasites. At the beginning of the 20th century, German doctors proved that some unknown diseases were caused by bacteria and parasites. At the time, it wasn't too far a jump to assume that unknown pathogens could be behind unknown diseases. For instance, in modern times, it's been revealed that bere is caused by vitamin B1 deficiency, but at the start of the 20th century, many loudly proclaimed it was the work of an unidentified pathogen. Yes, my grandfather predicted that his research would be valuable to the army. So he asked for a budget, but they just laughed at him. As a researcher, her grandfather was very talented and passionate. But when it came to gaining the aid of political powers, he simply stuck out. Hinamizawa Syndrome. No, the possible existence of a parasite that infected the human brain and controlled emotions. Even though he made that remarkable achievement of discovering a mystery no one else had explained before him, he was unable to convince others of that achievement and spent his life alone, unable to garner support and unable to achieve proper recognition for his achievement. Independent research has its limits. Talented people, funding, and backup. A research project can only be successful if all those things are present. Takano had noticed her grandfather's mistakes, and that was why she did everything she could to obtain all that. The military at the time was hoping for a low-cost, immediate-acting weapon. While Takano's research was extremely intriguing, it didn't meet the military's expectations. But I heard you were the only one who understood my grandfather's research. Weren't you? In his journal, he calls you his best friend. We came from the same hometown. It was a miracle to run into someone from the same town on such a distant battlefield. Although we weren't close in age, we became very good friends. So we talked a lot. Many times he told me his research would be revolutionary and asked me to lay the groundwork to secure funding for full-scale research. I read in his journal that you talked to many different people about his research. Unfortunately, its value was never recognized. But I'm sure your support meant a lot to him. But I was never really able to do anything for him. That's why I want to help you, Mio. Helping you is like atoning for my mistakes. Thank you very much. He was lucky to have you as his best friend. If only there were more understanding people like you in the military's upper echelon. It's very regrettable to think that my grandfather's life might have been different. The old man closed his eyes and paused for a moment. Shortly after that, he looked into the distance and spoke. Actually, that isn't true at all. The higher-ups were interested in Takano's discovery. What? I've never heard of that before. Why didn't they support his research? Something came up and they couldn't let him look into the Hinamizawa Syndrome. Only a few of the top brass and myself knew the reason. Now that all but myself had passed, I think I should tell you, Mio, since you're carrying on his work. What came up? What was it? Takano had believed until this day that her grandfather's research was ridiculed by everyone, which was the reason why it had never gained any recognition. Her grandfather had asked the military for funding so he could uncover the secret of Hinamizawa Syndrome during the war. But just like the old man had said earlier, the military wanted an instant-acting weapon. That was why there wasn't any interest in the research. That was what she had believed. But as it turned out, the military had actually shown an interest after all. Before I go on, I need to explain about the Kwantan Army in Manchuria at the time. While the, I'm sorry for mispronouncing this, Kwantung Army was stationed in Manchuria, options were divided on whether to advance our forces north or south. At the time, Japan had troops in Manchuria, but opinions were divided on advancing north to deter the Soviet Union or advancing south to expand our territory and secure resources. With the Soviet Union and its predecessor Russia being landlocked, frozen nation, they had long yearned for an ice-free port that wouldn't freeze over in winter. They had made numerous attempts to expand their territory southward too. Those expansion policies were said to be the cause of the Russo-Japanese War. In the history books, it said that Japan won the Russo-Japanese War, but it was actually a draw, ending in a peace signed at the Treaty of Portsmouth. Both sides had simply set aside their spears after mutually exhausting their forces. It wasn't like Russia capitulated and offered a complete surrender. As a result, the perception of the Russian threat continued to smolder. Later, the Russian Empire was overthrown by a revolution, but Japan was unable to shake the threat that the new Soviet Union would advance south. According to the history books, Japan went south. They signed the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact and abandoned the northern advance. As a result, when the Great Patriotic War began, the Soviet Union was able to respond to pressure on the German front by pouring in their eastern forces. Though the Germans had managed to lay siege to Moscow, the Soviet launched whatever. Even with the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact, the Soviets couldn't tell if Japan would attack them at some point. Because of that threat, the Soviets had to leave some forces in the Far East, and they weren't able to devote enough troops to the German front. For starters, the Soviets had forged the Soviet Non-Aggression Pact too. Yet Germany broke the treaty and attacked the Soviet Union. To make matters worse, Japan and Germany had forged a military alliance. With all those factors in play, the Soviets naturally couldn't trust Japan to uphold their neutrality pact. Ironically, the Soviet Union was the one who broke the pact, but I won't go into that now. Exactly. Hitler signed the Tripartite Pact because he expected Japan to keep the Soviets' other front in check, but ultimately Japan abandoned the North. With the superior German offensive, many supported the idea of waiting and watching it play out. They believed that even if we did advance north, it would be another Germany conquered Moscow. However, that plan was exposed to Sorge, and the Soviets transferred their heavy tanks from the Far East border to the German front. That secured Germans' defeat at Moscow, and the Germans began seeing a string of defeats starting with the Battle of Kursk. It was a turning point in history, huh? During the Cold War, the Soviet Union was recognized as a global power, but at least in 1940, the Kwantung Army didn't think it was a particular threat. Japan had earned a victory with the Russo-Japanese War, and they took the new Soviet Union government lightly, assuming it wouldn't be stable after overthrowing the Russian Empire. That underestimation was corrected after the Nomonhan incident. After several fierce short-term battles with the Soviet Union's advanced mechanized corps that led to great losses, the Kwantung Army realized they shouldn't fight the Soviets, and that included Japan towards the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact. But at the very least, up until the Nomonhan incident, the Kwantung Army was strongly conscious of the Soviets and divided on advancing north or south. Thanks to that, there were also voices advising caution, suggesting we avoid all-out war with China in order to shore up our forces against the Soviets. But the Sino-Japanese War broke out after the Marco Polo Bridge incident, right? July 1937. The Japanese and Chinese armies were staring at each other across the Lugo Bridge in Beijing. It was the middle of the night on July 7. Chinese armies fired on the Japanese army in trading, and they engaged in combat. This triggered the long Sino-Japanese War. Yes. According to historical records, that incident triggered the Sino-Japanese War, but with opinions divided over advancing north or south, the army was equally divided over a full-scale confrontation with China. No, in fact, we even received our orders from General Staff Headquarters to resolve the matter quietly before the incident grew much bigger. Is there a purpose to this? So those supporting the northern advance wanted to settle the Battle of Lugo Bridge quietly, assisting the conflict with whatever. However, those on the mainland supporting the southern advance used this incident as cause to dispatch more troops to China. They enacted hard policies against China, and thus the Marco Polo Bridge incident became the trigger for Japan and China to enter all-out war. After that, in their bitter struggles in the Noma-Han incident, Japan greatly revised their Soviet strategy. They signed the Soviet-Japanese Neutrality Pact and secured the route for their southern advance. The Sino-Japanese War got worse and worse. If the Marco Polo Bridge incident hadn't happened, it's possible that history would have gone very differently. Maybe we wouldn't have ended up in a war with them anyway. However, if the South faction didn't get the chance, the military authorities would have kept restraining the Soviet Union, and the Soviets would have had to divide their forces between East and West. And maybe Germany could have invaded Moscow. Then Japan could have gone to Siberia. The map could have been very different from today. Germany wouldn't necessarily have won the war if they succeeded in taking Moscow. England was keeping its strength on the other side of the Dover Strait after all, and the United States was sorry. It is one of those ifs, huh? The Axis might have won the war. Yes, it's possible the gunshot from the Marco Polo Bridge incident changed the tide of history. Both sides had different opinions on who fired the shot, right? According to the Japanese side, a Chinese soldier fired a shot. However, the Chinese side claimed the shot was conspiracy invented by the Japanese military. But the shot was fired. Even though nobody knew who actually pulled the trigger, it sparked the Sino-Japanese War. Yes. That's what the history books say. But Kozomi-sensei... Thank you! What does this have to do with my grandfather? In the Marco Polo Bridge incident, a shot was fired at a unit that was training in the middle of the night. Everyone was summoned for roll call. There were missing one soldier. The soldier came back later, and it was said that he was sent as a messenger and got too close to the Chinese camp. By the way, did you know that soldier was from Hinamizawa? Huh? Really? When Takano was talking about Hinamizawa Syndrome, he said that soldiers from Hinamizawa could suddenly fall into a deranged state. And then we realized the soldier from the Marco Polo Bridge incident was in fact from Hinamizawa. Then what about the first shot fired? I don't know the truth. But I think it's possible that a soldier with the terminal stage of Hinamizawa Syndrome fired that shot. That soldier was killed in the incident. Since there was no record of it, nobody knows exactly how he died. The Japanese side claimed that the Chinese army had fired at them and negotiated with that in mind. Just a scant few days after the incident, Japan demanded an apology from the Chinese, and as a show of force, the Chinese side was, of course, opposed to that. The situation escalated at once. If research into Hinamizawa Syndrome continued, the higher-ups thought it would negatively influence the Japanese army's claim. So in order to avoid the risk of traversing the political gray zone, they rejected Takano's research. So because of that, they refused to even consider my grandfather's research long after the war ended too? Yes, that's exactly it. The war is over now, but there are still some conflicts there regarding historical recognition. Even if Takano didn't mean for it to happen, if his research into Hinamizawa Syndrome became public, it might cause a resurgence of quarrels over the long-ended war. Certain authorities were afraid of that, so they made sure his research was ignored even after the war. I was long warned not to aid him in any way myself. Takano tried to remain calm, but she couldn't stop herself from grimacing. She had just found out the real reason why her grandfather's research had been ignored. It was because of secret maneuvers by political masterminds. If those masterminds feared it so much, ironically, that meant that they acknowledged the importance of his research. Takano was saddened, frustrated to no end by her grandfather's lonely life. However, they are all dead now. I'm the only one who knows about this. If Takano was still alive, I was going to apologize to him and give him my unconditional support. But he is no longer with us. That's why I'm apologizing to you and offering to give you my full support instead. Are you sure? Wouldn't research into the Hinamizawa Syndrome dredge up the same subjects again? It's different now. Besides, research into the Hinamizawa Syndrome may produce more than a mere local disease. Depending on your research, post-war Japan may gain a trump card that makes it world power once more. So the tides and times have changed then. That's right. Unfortunately, Takano didn't live long enough to see that tide change. But he has you to continue for his research, so as long as I'm alive, I'll give you my full support. I promised to help Takano, but because of various things, I couldn't do anything. So I want to make up for that as long as I'm alive. I think that's the least I can do for the man who called me his best friend. Nozomi-sensei. Thank you so much. Oh, don't mention it. I'm just glad I was able to tell you everything before I died. Anyways, until I'm gone, make sure you get everything you need, okay? So if anything comes up, be sure to let me know. I'll do anything for you. Takano couldn't even imagine what kind of bond this old man and her grandfather had between them. But thanks to that bond, Takano was able to gain a powerful supporter. Tears welled up in Takano's eyes as she gave him an emotional look, but in her mind she was practically dancing at the promise of the old man's support. The old man and Takano both bowed at the same time to show each other their appreciation. Once that was done, the old man became a little more serious. After that far too lengthy preamble, he finally said what he wanted to tell her. So there you have it. This is what I wanted to say. The Hinamizawa Syndrome has the potential power to make history. It may not even twist the fate of our country. Or it may twist the fate of our country. So keep that in mind and be careful with your research. After the proprietor finished serving the food, she bowed and left. The room was very tastefully put together, reminding them of a tea ceremony room. While it was sparsely decorated, quite a bit of money had obviously gone into it. This is a very famous Japanese restaurant, where many high-up officials and other people had secret meetings. Takano was there, accompanied by about 5 gentlemen. She was sitting slightly further away from the men. They were clearly in much more important position than she was. One of the men, wearing an expensive double-breasted suit, told Takano not to move. Please relax, Takano. What we read is very interesting to us. I can't believe this research was just sitting there for dozens of years. It is surprising. I thought most of the research on BC weapons the Japanese military conducted the war failed to bear fruit. And nothing was left after the US military confiscated even the fundamental research. I heard this research was barely even glanced at by the top brass. I see. So that's why nobody knew about it and JHQ didn't investigate. It's truly unfortunate. In that sense, it's truly fortunate. Interesting that Dr. Takano's research would be succeeded by a different Takano. I suppose that's fate. It's like the deceased is using your body to complete his life's work. Maybe that's true. I feel a mysterious connection to him too. Takano adored Takano Hifumi and called him grandfather, but she hadn't revealed that relationship to others. She realized it wouldn't be beneficial for people to think she was involving personal feelings in continuing Dr. Takano's research. Publicly, she once had exchanges with Takano Hifumi, and after his death, discovered his research documents with his remains and chose to carry it on. At least that's how the story went. Well then. What do you think? The defense agency was very interested. According to Nakagawa-kun, the Defense Agency's Technical Research and Development Institute showed great interest. They offered to sponsor the research, too. Oh, that's wonderful! Congratulations, Takano. Thank you very much. Here's what they said. There's a research council for next-generation deterrence being led by experts from several different ministries. One of those is called the Alphabet Project. Have you heard of it, Takano? There was no way she wouldn't know about something like that. But it was very possible for the nationalists to research something dangerous without citizens knowing about it. Society forms something like a web made up of connections between people. People hold hands with other people who share the same ideas and end up knitting a net. Of course, some nets are well known, but there are secret ones too. So there was no way of guessing just how the men in this meeting were. A society involving research into deterrent weapons for the next generation. The Alphabet Project. With those words, it was possible to imagine what that might entail. Deterrent weapons. That usually refers to nuclear technology. Weapons are normally used to destroy enemies. However, the general idea of a deterrent weapon is very different. The assumption is that they won't actually be used against anyone. Nuclear weapons are used as a threat to prevent enemy invasion. Both the US and Soviets possess large stockpiles of nuclear arms, keeping each other in check. But they will never actually use them. Because if they did, there'd be a nuclear war and both countries would be destroyed. They're like legendary weapons you never draw. Of course, that's the last resort, only works because both sides have nuclear weapons. If one side lacks them, then they all lose military negotiation power. In other words, nations without nukes are powerless because nuclear armies. That can't be true. Japan abandoned nukes and it still functions as a nation today. Or, some people may be thinking, but they're wrong. Japan abandoned nukes but lies under the nuclear umbrella by allying itself with America. That means the nation functions thanks to America's nukes. However, that also means we must resign ourselves to forever being a vassal of America. In order for Japan to escape that and become a powerful nation equal to America, it must possess its own deterrence arms and step out of the nuclear race. That society must have been put together by experts who believe in that ideal. Given that, even the name Alphabet Project makes sense. Nuclear weapons are weapons of mass destruction. However, weapons of mass destruction aren't always nuclear. They also include biological weapons and chemical weapons. Atomic, biological, chemical. The initials of these three words make up the ABC. That's why weapons of mass destruction are sometimes called ABC weapons. I won't go into weapons that don't belong to those three categories. ABC alphabet. In other words, Alphabet Project must be a code for research into weapons of mass destruction. As it happened, the guess of Takano's was correct. By rights, Japan should possess nuclear arms. We established ourselves as a peace-loving nation after the war, and after our vast international contributions, we've been recognized as a permanent member of the UN. Yet, until we possess nuclear arms, we won't be recognized as a proper nation. That is the long-held desire of post-war Japan! Exactly. However, realistically, thanks to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the major nations hold a monopoly on nukes. Worse, our domestic public opinion is growing allergic to nukes, so foreign and domestic pressures make implementing them impossible. Biological and chemical weapons are sometimes known as the poor man's nuke. Small countries that can't own nuclear weapons have already started research into that kind of weaponry. Takano, please don't misunderstand us, okay? The purpose of our research isn't to obtain a biological weapon. Instead, our goal is to prevent such weapons from coming into Japan from other countries. So this research into self-defense, I want you to understand that. Yes, I'm aware of that. Takano hated this Japanese tendency to make excuses, but she didn't let it show on her face. No matter what they said, they already saw the value in using this research towards biological weaponry. However, in truth, that was just an excuse as well. If they actually wanted to research biological weapons, then it would be much faster to research diseases like smallpox and anthrax instead of an unidentified disease like Hinamizawa Syndrome. So it wasn't actually correct to say the defense agency was interested in it as a biological weapon. In other words, Takano needed a powerful sponsor who could back her up with funding, personnel, and a facility to conduct her research. So she used her connections and turned to the old men behind the government and economy, reaching out to each of them and getting them to forcibly pull funding out of the defense agency under the excuse of its application towards biological weaponry. That was the truth. Therefore, her project wasn't officially recognized by the defense agency. To be exact, the people who secretly controlled the defense agency were what? These masterminds diverted funding from the defense agency to the Alphabet Project. And then they pushed for Takano's research to be a part of it. Takano gets her funding, and the influencers get to drain public funds through kickbacks. Considering that, it was doubtful this project was genuinely about researching the next generation of deterrence arms. It was probably just an excuse for masterminds to funnel money into their own pockets. Well, those complicated matters didn't matter to Takano. Whatever these old men and influencers were planning wasn't her business. As long as she could get funding for her research, that was enough. Either way, Takano had found her sponsor. It was one of the biggest organizations around, too. This has always been her grandfather's dream. Takano was trying to stay calm, but she was about to jump up and down in excitement. Nakagawa-kun says that once the research gets underway, he doesn't mind buying it out. Although it's still incomplete, he definitely sees potential in it. You're absolutely right. This research is only halfway complete. Sufficient funding, facilities, and personnel will be indispensable. About that. Here's where the negotiations start, but apparently they wish to take on this research in its entirety. I feel bad for saying this, but they think the burden is too much for you to bear alone. Hearing that put quite a damper on Takano's ecstasy. I'm not trying to make money off of this. I'm working as a researcher purely out of intellectual curiosity. What I need is a sponsor. And what they seek are results. That was the relationship I hoped to establish. Takano realized she was talking rather breathlessly, so she tried to calm herself down. Either way, they'd be backing the research. Considering they're hoping for results that merit the budget, they probably feel that Takano is still too young to handle it. I know. You've been working on this for a long time and you don't want anyone to just grab it from you, right? I totally understand that. Of course, we've already informed them. So here's the compromise we came up with. First, we'll start your research as an offshoot of the Alphabet Project. Once you have the board of directors' approval, you'll be given official funding. We'll have you participate in this project as an associate researcher, and you'll take part in this research. If she wanted their funding, she'd have to fall under their authority, of course. So she had no objections. However, the Research Society has listed a few conditions in exchange for funding this project. First, as we just mentioned, it is to entrust the position of lead researcher to an individual that's skilled and talented in the field of this research. I hate to interject, but who would be more knowledgeable about this than me, other than the late Dr. Takano, of course. Now, please calm down, Takano. I understand how you feel. Still, how is this any different from selling my research to this individual? This isn't what we discussed at all. Calm down, Takano. Those cunning old men didn't miss sight of the faint leak of anger that crossed Takano's expression. They gave evasive laughs, as if remarking how immature she still was if she let her emotions show over such a little thing. However, they weren't laughing to look down on Takano. On the contrary, they were trying to tell her to wait until the end. Of course, we'll make sure you get your way. Koizumi-sensei told me to take good care of you. Do you think I would just ignore you after he told me that? Don't worry. Please let me work things out. I'll make sure you'll be happy. What do you mean? You see, I get to select the person in charge. Everyone chortled except Takano. After a moment, she joined in. In other words, he meant that he would find just the right person. The defense agency had just suggested finding an expert to lead the project because they didn't feel comfortable with just Takano. However, Takano's sponsor was the one tasked to find such a person. In that moment, Takano realized it. Ah, how wonderful it is to have such a powerful backer. Let me work it out. I'll find some candidates for you. All you have to do is pick the one you think would be most suitable. Takano felt better after hearing that. While she wouldn't be the official head of the project, she would end up leading it from the shadows. Of course, she wasn't an expert per se, Having a partner would actually be beneficial. Give me some time to talk to the other end. I'll make sure you'll be happy with the outcome. Please just be patient for a while. I understand. Thank you for everything. Oh, by the way, it's not just the defense agency. Nagata from the Ministry of Health and Welfare is willing to help you too. He introduced me to Ito-kun from the National Institute of Infectious Diseases. He's willing to help you with equipment and other technology. Really? Thank you so much. This is a national project, isn't it? Congratulations, Takano. This is all because of your effort and the deceased Dr. Takano's hard work. Oh no. This is all because of Dr. Takano. I haven't done anything yet. Being humble is a good virtue. Just like Koizumi-sensei told me, you truly are a nice person, aren't you? No wonder he adores you. Anyway, they want you to join the defense agency. Luckily, you have a doctor's license, right? We'll secure your position as a medical officer of the TRDI. Do you mean I'll be a public servant? I wasn't expecting that. All the organizations that are involved with the Alphabet Project are public institutions. The SDF is actually interested in this research as well, and they're making strong requests to dispatch some of their personnel too. So, depending on the circumstances, you may be treated as an SDF member. I'll just think of those matters as officials squabbling over jurisdiction. No matter what, we'll make sure you're happy, so please don't worry about anything. I understand. I'll let you work things out. But knowing Dr. Takano's research was once rejected by the old Japanese military, it's hard to believe that the Self-Defense Force is interested in it now. Well, that couldn't be stopped. With the war situation worsening, the Japanese military sought something with immediate effect, something that could turn the war around. I don't think they were looking down on Takano's research. That wasn't true, of course. Takano already heard that confession from the old man. She exhaled. To her, it was like the meeting in front of her was happening somewhere far away. She had longed for this day to come and worked so hard to reach it. Finally, her grandfather and his research were attaining recognition. This was the day she had dreamed of. So she was frightened just imagining that it might be an actual dream. True joy can't be felt all at once. Oftentimes it's a delayed reaction. Takano thought that must be exactly what she was feeling. I imagine you'll probably be given a field officer's rank. Since you'll be second in command, you'll likely be major. That's wonderful! Major Takano, huh? I'm a little jealous. As a man, I wish I had that rank. Boy, oh boy, Major Takano, huh? Mm-hmm. A major? What does that signify? Well, it's a reasonably high rank in the self-defense forces. It's like a sub-manager at a company, I guess. That will be your rank once the project gets underway. Grandpa, I'm finally here. Nobody else could hear her say that. But her grandfather in heaven could. That's what Takano believed. She had only come so far. There were still a lot of things to do for this research to be recognized as a great work. Otherwise, her grandfather won't become a god. She wouldn't become one either. You must become a god. That wasn't her grandfather's will. I wasn't able to do so. That line preceded it. It was her grandfather's dying will. Her grandfather entrusted it to her. All of his research. A god can't be physically brought back to life. God is made in the hearts of those who remain alive. Her grandfather will live on in her heart. His exploits will be known to many, and all scholars will fight to read his documents, steal them from each other. And they will learn about Hifumi Takano, who began his research during the war. They will know that nobody understood him, that he ended up devoting his lonely life to research. And finally, they will extol his grand achievement. Alright, anyways, I still love you guys. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.